In this video, we will be showing you how to swap out the steering parts on the Redcat 64, specifically the spindle and the tie rod. This will hopefully be useful to you if you're switching over to the new steering parts made to minimize toe-in with the front suspension fully extended. For this job, you'll need the replacement parts, some needle nose pliers, a 1.5mm hex driver, and also a 4.5mm socket will make things a bit easier. First step is to remove the wheel. You should be able to remove the knockoff and nut with your fingers. If it's too tight, put a piece of cloth over the knockoff and gently twist off with some needle nose pliers. Next, remove the 12mm hex and the hex pin. Then you're going to use the 1.5mm hex driver to remove the lock screws on the lower and upper control arm. Then use the hex driver to push the pin out of the end of the control arms. You can use the pliers to grab the pin and pull it the rest of the way out. Also, go ahead and pop the tie rod off of the ball studs using the pliers. You should now be able to pull the C-hub off the control arms. Set the chassis aside for now. The next step is to remove the spindle from the C-hub using the 1.5mm hex driver to loosen the kingpin screws. Now remove the axle and use the driver to push the bearings out. Next, you will want to remove the ball stud from the spindle. This is a trivial task with a 4.5mm socket, but if you don't have one, pliers will do the trick. Go ahead and install the ball stud onto the new spindle, making sure you have the right one for the side of the car that you're working on. Push the bearings in place in the new spindle. You may need to squeeze these in with some pliers or a vise to get them all the way flush. Don't squeeze so hard that you break the plastic, however. Then go ahead and put the axle back into the spindle. Now place the spindle back in the C-hub and tighten the kingpin screws. You want these to be snug so that the spindle doesn't wobble around any, but not so tight that it can't turn freely in the C-hub. Keep in mind that the C-hub is symmetrical, so don't worry too much about putting it back on the car exactly as it came out. Now let's put the C-hub back on the control arms. Put the pins back in place and then replace the retaining screws. Keep in mind the upper control arms are not the same on both sides of the car, so on the other side you will need to press in the upper pivot pin from the back. Now pop on the new tie rod using pliers to snap it onto the ball studs on the steering arm and on the rack. Next, put the hex pin back in, replace the hex, and put your wheel back on. The wheel should only be tightened finger tight and it should spin freely. That's it. Thanks for watching and enjoy your 64.